Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Morning Devo with Beau. Beau Willettes. My name, Willette. Willette. That's right, not Olette, but Willette. Willette. So, je m'appelle Beau Willette. That's right. And anyway, I hope that helps. Very French-Canadian name. Willette Street out in the state of Maine. Of all states, yep, there is a place where the Willettes hung out with after they came in from the north, the Great White North, that is. You know where those French Canadian people dwell. Anyway, Genesis 18 today on the morning devotion. And hey, let's say hi to April. There's a little picture of our daughter when she was a little girl out in the wonderful state of Hawaii. And yeah. So I'm leaving that up there for the week. That's my kind of picture of the week. I like to always put different pictures up. It's super fun. Okay, so Genesis 18, let's get into the Devo. You can always check out the archives at my YouTube channel, Beau Willette, spelling's right there. Or you can just go to beauwillette.com too. That's my catch-all. So this is my second time through the Bible. So there might be the old streams up there, but you know, that's okay. It's still going through the Bible. And that's really the point, is just getting through the Bible. So let's go through it. Genesis 18, so glad you could join me. And it is warm. It is hot where I'm at. It's going to get hotter too. For some reason, everything feels hotter for me as I age. So this says, the Lord appeared again to Abraham near the oak grove belonging to Mamre. So it's kind of interesting. You kind of get the idea that there's these little kind of, hey, by the oak. We've seen that before in the Bible, meaning there's these markers that are used in describing kind of when this happened or where it happened specifically, right? So people that were reading this could certainly go, oh, I think I know where that's at, It would be like someone in your hometown, right, saying, hey, remember that big tree over by, this area, by Rancho Park, or, by this or by that, or, where I'm from, when people say stuff like that, we know exactly what we're referring to, We know the land well enough to go, oh, yeah, I know that area. So notice too, it's the Lord that appears again to Abraham. And this is kind of cool, is the appearance of God, the study of the appearance of God in the Bible is really, really interesting. It's a great study. How does God appear to human beings throughout the scriptures? How does it look? Well, let's see. In this section, kind of how this appearance looks. One day, Abraham was sitting at the entrance to his tent during the hottest part of the day. Smart man, right? Ready to go in. It's too hot. He looked up and noticed 3 men standing nearby. And then it says, when he saw them, he ran to meet them and welcomed them, bowing low to the ground. I would imagine that it wasn't kind of always normal to just see kind of someone coming closer to you as you're hanging out in the heat in kind of the Middle East. That back in those days, there were the tribes and the nomads and, people wandering around. But to have specifically 3 people, kind of coming towards you, was kind of an interesting sight. And Abraham certainly took to it and ran to meet them and welcome them, bowing low to the ground. That's interesting. Now, Abraham's had some interesting encounters with God. And I wonder if he was kind of anticipating how God was going to kind of come to him next. But this is great how Abraham, after the covenant of circumcision, and the covenant saying, hey, I'm going to bless your generations. This is an everlasting covenant. It's an everlasting covenant with your kids and their kids from generation to generation, not through Ishmael, but through Isaac. Then, and remember, there's other religions that say that this is wrong, by the way. There's other religions that say, no, it's really through Ishmael. Well, you just got a big problem with that. Everything we have in the manuscript evidence for the book of Genesis all says Isaac. It doesn't say Ishmael. It doesn't say the 12 tribes, meaning of Israel, the land is going to be Ishmael's. No, the land known as Canaan is going to be through Isaac. But, they got their reasoning. And so they're going to hold to it, I'm sure. And that's why there's incredible historical fighting over this region known as the land of Canaan. Ishmael and Isaac still brawling. But Abraham is told, or we're told, that he actually comes and he bows low to the ground as if these people are to be honored. And you think by now Abraham's quite a guy, very wealthy man, and quite a warrior himself. But he bows low to the ground, and he says, "My Lord, if it pleases you, stop here for a while, rest in the shade of this tree while water is brought to wash your feet." That's really interesting. It's really interesting on multiple levels, but just in reading this, when you read the Bible, and you read about the Messiah, you read about the Messiah washing the disciples' feet, which is kind of a lowly act, right? Jesus washing people's feet. And here you see that Abraham, when he meets this person in a body on the planet, he says, "Hey, my Lord." And he says, "Can I wash your feet? Can I wash your feet?" It's like the John the Baptist thing, right? Like, hey, man, me baptize you? I'm not even worthy to unlace your sandals, man. It's like Abraham kind of knew his place. And he says, "Hey, can I wash your feet? Man, you guys have been traveling. You're all dirty, Man, let me do the honor." Is that how... there's a couple things in my life. What am I anticipating today? What am I anticipating of God? Am I like Abraham, kind of waiting, anticipating, seeing what God's going to do next? Hey, how's God going to move? What's he going to do? That kind of thing. Am I trying to control everything? The work of God? Hey, if you do this, you do this. Is that how I am? Or am I anticipating God's doing something? God's working through people. God's touching people, and he's moving, and he's got this going on, and he's got that going on. Some people are just like dictators. They're just like, hey, do this, do this, do this, do this, and I think God will move. Do this, do this, do this, and I think God will move. And other people are just anticipating what God's going to do. They already know God's moving. They just are looking for where God's moving. They're excited about it. I want to be that person. I want to be that person who knows, who's already kind of in the know that God's moving on people. God's touching people's hearts. I don't want to be that person of like, oh, well, if we just do this and if we just do that, and if there's just revival, then God will be moving. Or if we do this, then God will move. What? No, God's moving. God's moving already. God's about to do something. No, God's already doing something. He's already doing amazing things. He's already done so many amazing things, and he continues to do amazing things. And I get blown away, man, every week. Man, I just see that God does unbelievable things. It just blows my mind every week. I'm sure it's kind of boring for a lot of people in our church when they hear me say, hey, man, God did this week, or God's doing this week. Man, God don't stop. He's always moving, right? Do I have that kind of heart? Or again, am I that fuddy-duddy guy? Christian person who's just like, well, God will move, but first you got to do this. And first first you got to, if we just did this, then God will move. Man, God's moving. It's just whether you're noticing, whether you're anticipating, whether you're seeing it, And I find another thing too, and that is just the heart of service, the heart of knowing my place. Do you really know your place? Do I know my place? If I saw the Lord on the planet, would I recognize the Lord? And would I say, I'm going to wash your feet? Would that be my heart? Or would my heart be, hey, Lord, you hang out at the church and you pick up everything. Hey, Lord, you hang out and could you do this for me? Could you do that for me? Could you do this for me? Is that my heart? What kind of minister are you? And what kind of minister am I? Am I the one that just sits in an office and reads the Bible? Sometimes I'll do 9 teachings a week. 9 Bible teachings a week. It's a lot. I don't need to sit in a room and study the Bible. It's not that it's not important to study the Bible. I do sit in a room at some point and study the Bible. But there's a lot of things, a lot of ways to serve the Lord. There's a lot of things that need to get done. And am I too busy, sitting studying? And I'll let someone else do that other stuff. Now I can't do everything. Other people are going to need to serve. You can't do everything either. But do I have the heart like Jesus? Do I have a heart like Jesus Jesus on the planet goes and he serves? And do I have a heart like Abraham that says, hey, Lord, let me wash your feet? Even though I am the rich Abraham, I am the one who, the covenant has been given to me, through my seed. Let me, wash your feet. Let me walk humbly. What's going to show humility, to the church? How are people going to see that Beau walks in humility? It's not going to be in a room studying the Bible. It's going to be when they see me doing lowly things. Washing feet. Yeah. Washing feet. It doesn't seem like a very fun thing, but it certainly shows a heart of service. A heart of knowing your place. Knowing your place. And if Jesus humbled himself to wash the disciples' feet, though he is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and he says, no servant is greater than his master, then it really begs the question, is my service in the church greater than my master? Is the way I serve telling people that I am greater than Jesus? By not serving in a lowly way. Something needs to get moved. Something needs to get cleaned. Something needs to get picked up. Something needs to get, washed. Something needs to get scrubbed. The walls are dirty. The molding's dirty. Whatever it is. Are you willing to do it? Or not really? Because you got more important things to do. Man, what a devotion on just my heart. And really, even though I call on the Lord, do I really think I'm above my master? And do I live a life that shows I am above my master? By where I live, how I live, all that, does it show that I am greater than Jesus? Wow, that is something to really, really go to the Lord about. And it says, he looked up and he noticed these people, and then he bows low to the ground. And he says, and since you've honored your servant with this visit, let me prepare some food to refresh you before you continue on your journey. So Abraham says, let me wash your feet. And he says, let's eat. Kind of cool. Jesus was very much into the idea of washing people's feet, walking humbly, and also eating. It's great. God shows up in a body. We are only in the 18th chapter of the Bible, and we've already seen this a few times. Is that mind-boggling? If someone says God can't come to the earth or take a body or things like that, they're just not reading the Bible. That's all I could say. They're just not reading this. It says, let me prepare some food to refresh. He says, I want to honor you. And he says, all right. They said, do as you have said. So Abraham ran back to the tent and said to Sarah, hurry, get 3 large measures of your best flour, knead it into dough, and bake some bread. Then Abraham ran out to the herd and chose a tender calf and gave it to his servant, who quickly prepared it. And when the food was ready, Abraham took some yogurt and milk and the roasted meat, a lot of protein, and he served it to the men, and they ate. Abraham waited on them in the shade of the trees. Abraham becomes a waiter. Is my service to people not only humble, not only am I willing, do I serve in a way that really shows I am not greater than my master? Do I live in a way that shows that I am really not greater than my master who walked humbly? And am I a waiter? Am I willing to wait, or have I grown impatient? Am I impatient? Oh, that's a bother. Oh, it keeps bothering me. Yeah? Well, maybe you keep bothering other people. See, sometimes we're not understanding what's really going on. We think, oh, I'm bothered. Yeah, have you ever thought that maybe we bother people? See, sometimes we can get so selfish that everything revolves around us. Oh, I'm bothered by this. And we don't want to wait. Waiting on them. He waited. He had to sit and wait. He had to walk around and wait. He had to go do chores and wait. But he waited on them. And it says in the shade of the trees, he just waited. I take it he just sat down and waited. Where is Sarah, your wife? The visitors asked. She is inside the tent, Abraham replied. Then one of them said, I will return to you about this time next year, and your wife Sarah will have a son. I will return to you, and Sarah's going to have a kid? That sounds pretty radical. Okay, you're going to come back, and there's going to be offspring. I'm going to go away, and I'm going to come back. That sounds kind of similar too, right? Jesus, I go away, I'll come back. Yeah, this interesting kind of going and coming of God on the planet. It's not just Jesus, it's not just, why did God wait till Jesus came? He didn't. It's a wrong question you have to read. God's constantly coming to the planet in various ways. Wow, various contexts. So when people say, hey, well, why did God wait for Jesus, and then come during, in Jesus time kind of thing? Well, you have a lot of things wrong with that question. A lot of assumptions that are based in non-truths. And obviously we're only on the 18th chapter. We see how God is on the planet once again, and we'll kind of see this. And so anyway, God's going to come and he's going to do something radical. Hey, we anticipate it. Get ready. God's doing something cool. Sarah was listening to this conversation from the tent, and Abraham and Sarah were both very old by this time, and Sarah was long past the age of having children. So she laughed silently to herself. Abraham laughed before, but now Sarah laughs when this kind of message comes to them about having a child. And how could a worn-out woman like me enjoy such pleasure, especially when my master, my husband, is also so old? Now, this is a real, I would say, kind of a very bold statement of the day. Hey, it's her way of saying, guess what? I'm really not ready to have children. My body's just, those days are gone. Those days for pleasure. This is something that's kind of, a hard fact of life too, is that it's not always going to be the same. Your intimate life, your desires will change as time moves on. Sarah knew this, Sarah saw it, and Sarah was bold to declare it. I think it's good too, just a little quick note to husbands and wives, is that you have to be sensitive to the need to the issues going on in your spouse's body. Sarah was pretty clear. Hey, man, body's gone through a lot. Enjoying the pleasure of intimacy? Not really. It's more like pain, kind of thing. Or it's more difficult. She's real clear on that. Us, again, marital people need to be sensitive to how our spouse feels. It's not about you. Love does not seek its own. Love does not seek its own. 1 Corinthians 13. If you're seeking your own at the expense of someone else, it ain't love. And it says, then the Lord said to Abraham, the Lord says to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh? The Lord. The Lord is capitalized, by the way. What? What does that mean? The Lord? It sounds like it's Yahweh, Lord. Why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, can an old woman like me have a baby? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son. El Shaddai, the Lord, right? Man, he's able. The Lord is able to do things, right? The Lord can do it all. Do I trust in the Lord? And about this time, God reiterates. Sometimes that's what God does with us, is he just keeps reiterating the promises, right? Why I have to go to church every Sunday. Why I need to listen on Wednesday. Why I need to pay attention. Because I need to hear over and over, hey, God's going to do something. God's going to do something. God's going to deliver you. God's going to free you. God's going to resurrect you. God's going to, this whole thing. I need to hear that over and over. I guess Sarah and Abraham did too. They had to hear it over and over and over. That, hey, guess what? God can do this. God can do it. So Sarah was afraid, so she denied it, saying, I didn't laugh. But the Lord said, no, you did laugh. You see that there was fear rolling around in Sarah. What do you mean? What am I going to do when I have a child? So many people fear having a child, especially in an old age. How is this going to work? It's a miraculous birth, no matter how you look at this. Just as Jesus, Mary, a miraculous birth. Yeah, different, but, miraculous, special. And something where Mary and Joseph were a little freaked out by everything. Here you see Sarah, their great, right down the line grandma, also was afraid. It's okay. Sometimes we are afraid at the work of God in us. We don't know what God's going to do or how he's going to do it. How are you going to deliver? How are you going to make us right? How are you going to free us from sin? How are you going to do this? How's this going to happen? What's going to happen here? What's going to happen to my kids? All this stuff. And God says, hey, I'm able. Trust me. Then the men got up from their meal and looked out towards Sodom. And as they left, Abraham went with them to send them on their way. Should I hide my plan from Abraham? The Lord asked. For Abraham will certainly become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. They'll be a great nation. All the nations are going to be blessed through this lineage. All of them. There's going to be someone, some person, some people, some special Messiah that's going to come from this line. See, this is what we're waiting for, is this person to come on the scene. And we're getting the breakdown, the revelation of where deliverance is going to come from. It's always nice to know where deliverance is going to come from, right? There's a fire. It's great to know deliverance is coming. There's an issue going on. It's great to know the police are coming. Deliverance, knowing where deliverance comes from is a confidence builder. And boy, if I know that there's deliverance coming from God, that can be a confidence builder in us. It's the wonderful truth. He is going to do and bless. Boy, I have singled him out so that he will direct his sons and their families to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right. This is why the law is set up. It's to direct Abraham's family to do the right things, to approach God the right way. That's why we're going to see the law of Moses. God is going to direct his sons and their families to keep the way of Yahweh by doing what is right and just. The law is a teaching of what is right and just, how to approach God, how to think of God, how to dwell with God, how to serve God. All those things are intricately taught in the law of Moses. So the Lord told Abraham, I have heard a great outcry from Sodom and Gomorrah because their sin is so flagrant. I am going down to see their actions actions are as wicked as I have heard. If not, I want to know. The other men turned and headed towards Sodom. So it's interesting. Now you see there's two men, but then there's the Lord. One of them's spoken of as the Lord on the planet in a body, hanging out with two other people. That's radical. And they're going to go down to Sodom. But the Lord remained with Abraham. Abraham approached him and said, will you sweep away both the righteous and the wicked? Suppose you find 50 righteous people living in the city. Will you still sweep it away and not spare it for their sakes? Surely you wouldn't do such a thing, destroying the righteous along with the wicked. Why would you be treating the righteous and the wicked exactly the same? Surely you wouldn't do that. Surely not the judge of all the earth. He will do what is right. Abraham knows who he's talking to. The judge of all the earth. This is the person Jesus declared he is. He is the judge, John chapter 5. He is the one who will judge the earth in righteousness, Acts 17. This is Jesus, the one who's coming. Maybe he's the guy with the sharp sickle in his hand, Revelation, and he's going to reap the harvest. Judgment is going to come. Jesus says, when you see the Son of Man coming in the clouds, right, with all the angels with him, and he comes to set up his kingdom, he's going to judge between the goats and the sheep and the goats judgment. Very interesting. That's in Matthew 25. The whole point of those is the idea that Jesus declares to be this person, the judge of all the earth. And who is it? Yahweh on the planet in a body. Very cool. The Son. Very interesting. And it says, and the Lord replied, if I find 50 righteous people in Sodom, I will spare this city for their sake. Then Abraham spoke again, since I have begun, let me speak further to my Lord. It's very much like Jesus and the disciples. Hey, can I say another question, Jesus? Since I have begun, let me speak further. Even though I am but dust and ashes. Go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man, Peter said to Jesus. Abraham says the similar things, right? I'm just dust, man. I'm dust and ashes. Suppose there are only 45, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. 45 righteous people rather than 50. will you destroy the whole city for a lack of 5? And the Lord said, I will not destroy if I find 45 righteous people there. And Abraham pressed this further question, suppose there are only 40. And the Lord replied, I will not destroy it for the sake of the 40. Now remember, the 2 other messengers left over to Sodom. And here the Lord stayed. The Lord in a body is hanging out with Abraham, having a conversation just like Jesus did with his disciples. Please don't be angry, my Lord, Abraham pleaded. Let me speak. Suppose only 30 righteous people are found. And the Lord replied, I will not destroy it if I find 30. Then Abraham said, since I have dared to speak to the Lord, let me continue. Suppose there are only 20. And the Lord replied, then I will not destroy it for the sake of 20. Finally, Abraham said, Lord, please do not be angry with me. If I speak one more time, suppose only 10 are found there. And the Lord replied, then I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. Then the Lord had finished his conversation with Abraham. He went on his way, and Abraham returned to his tent. Wow. God is just. God will do the right thing. Can I trust that today? Can I trust that God is going to do, well, not the God of the judge of all the earth do what is right. Jesus declares himself to be this person. That's why they knew that he was claiming to be God, because he spoke in this manner. He spoke in a way of authority, meaning he spoke as if he were the deity on the planet. Not like he was an authoritative teacher, like, hey, go do this, or hey, go do that. No, that's not what he's talking about. It's meaning when it says authoritatively. He's speaking as though he is the first person God on the planet. You know, God who hung out with Abraham in a body on the planet. You know, God who hung out with Adam and Eve in a body in the garden. You know, the God who's hanging out with Hagar. You know, the interesting messenger of the Lord, right? Interesting. God on the planet says, I am going to judge righteously. And this world is ripe for judgment. And so am I okay with God's judgment and how he's going to judge and who he's going to judge and when he's going to judge and how he's going to judge, all that? Or am I going to try to take it on myself? Am I going to try to judge myself, judge people and figure it out and blah, blah, Or can I just give people over to God? Or do I have to keep talking about them over and over and over? Or can I give them to God? God, you judge them. God, you deal with them. This is what Jesus did, and he showed us this as an example, that when he died on the cross, he committed judgment to the Father. Now, we're told Jesus is going to judge the earth. But when Jesus was on the cross, why he could forgive everybody is because he could trust his Father to take care of the matter. When you know someone's going to take care of the matter, it's a cool thing. Have you ever been in like a gang fight before? I know that's kind of an odd question, but it's kind of weird. It's like when you're in a fight with multiple people, there's like a lot of people involved. Your confidence comes from the big people in your crew. Meaning when someone could, lay down some blows that's part of your crew, then you have a confidence. You kind of feel pretty good. Like, man, we're going to do great. Why? Not because of me, but because the judge of all the earth is going to he's going to lay down some stuff. I know that's a weird analogy, but that's how I can relate to it in my upbringing, is I can kind of relate to that. Like I'm confident that God's going to be able to take care of all this stuff. Why? Because God is all powerful. God knows hearts. He truly knows hearts. He knows where you're at. He knows if you're living for Jesus or you just say you live for Jesus. He knows if you're living above your master or you're really walking humbly like the master. He knows all that. And he'll be able to judge righteously. Wowee. Man, God, and the thing is when you know Jesus and you've given your life to Jesus, you're okay with his judgment on you. Because you know it's there to, weed out the stuff that needs to go. But if you're in enmity with Jesus, you're fighting God, then, you are in contention. You don't want his judgment because you know his judgment is going to be thorough. And you do not want to be exposed, and therefore you keep fighting God and you keep fighting God. Not realizing that God is the safest person you could bring your vulnerability to. Because he can cover you with grace. He can give you mercy. And he can move you in the right direction so that you can have that fellowship. Boy, it must have been intimidating for Abraham to keep saying, God, can I say one more thing? Can I say one more thing? But that beautiful vulnerability of, this guy could judge me. God is right here, and God could see through me, and God could judge me right now. But yet his mercy is upon me. And how beautiful that Abraham got a chance to experience Jesus on the planet. We get in the New Testament that Abraham saw Jesus' day and was glad. Meaning Abraham had pictures of Jesus and encounters with the true and living God that are much more greater than most people understand. He saw Jesus' day and was glad. A day where Jesus the Messiah would be on the planet. Very cool. Okay, so I hope you guys get that. That is another mind-blowing passage. And again, a lot of people don't read the Bible, so they ask wrong questions because they just don't realize what God has already done in the past and how God has already revealed himself in the past. And it's very similar to the Messiah on the planet. And so anyway, that's why we read through the Bible, right? So we can just tell people, hey, this is what the Bible says. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We saw that today too. Kind of cool, right? Okay, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.